All right, let's get started. Woo! We have a lot to cover, so here we go. We are officially starting, last week was our introduction into the book of Deuteronomy. I want to tell you that, and this is no joke, probably about 5 months ago, I told Steve that I was thinking about Deuteronomy, and I was honestly wrestling with it. Not that I didn't want to, it's just like, why Deuteronomy? Why Deuteronomy? And God just kept saying to me, you're going to be doing Deuteronomy. It has become very clear to me why God is going to be leading us through this book, through this transition that we're going to be in. And so I just want you to know that the phrase up here, moving forward by looking back, is very important. We are going to be moving forward as a church. I'm going to give you some stuff today so you understand that. But so for those of you who are new with us, you don't know, we have sold this property. Our date to be off this property is January 15th. We have got to be somewhere. And so because of that, we are moving forward. And how we move forward is so significant, as you're going to see in this message. And so I want to let you know that what is happening and again, if you've come recently, you're going, well, this seems like it's happening really fast. We've been in this process for 3 years. It's now coming to where it's going to happen really fast. But I will say to you, this first chapter blew me away because when I started studying it months ago, I had no idea how pertinent the information was going to be for us today. I've said enough. Let's get started. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 1. These are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness. So, this first chapter flips back and forth. You have pre-40 years of wandering in the wilderness and post-40 years wandering in the wilderness. This first phrase is pre. He's speaking to these young people, the oldest would have been about 50, of those who have literally had their parents die off in the wilderness, and he's saying, look, I'm going to tell you why it is so important that you know how we got to this place. And he's going to be reminding them of this truth. And he's saying, look, I want to remind you of this. Jump down to verse 3. And by the way, for those of you that are used to me going verse by verse through books, because of how we're attacking this book, and the reason why I gave you the reading plan is that you're going to read every verse when we get to Sundays. For example, in 2 weeks, I'm covering chapters 2 and 3. So we're going to be moving quickly. So I want you to do the reading plan so you see every verse, okay? Verse 3, in the 40th year on the first day of the 11th month. What does that mean? They have been wandering in the desert for 40 years, or the wilderness for 40 years. He is now talking to this group of people, and he is reminding them, this is how we got here. Moses spoke to the people of Israel according to all that the Lord had given him in commandment to them. Jump down to verse 5. Beyond the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to explain this law, saying, the Lord our God said to us in Horeb, you have stayed long enough on this mountain. We are now going pre-40 years in the wilderness. What is happening is this. When God had Moses take them from Egypt through the Red Sea, they came to this place called Horeb. And it was there, by the way, that you have the giving of the 10 Commandments. This is where the golden calf incident takes place. But at this point, God is beginning to feed them. He's feeding them manna. He is actually, at this point, he is being a pillar of fire at night and a cloud in the day. And so he's been leading them and guiding them. And what happens is that God says to them, you have stayed long enough on this mountain. And that's the first thing I want you to connect with. Folks, there are times in our lives, not just as a church, but as individuals, we have stayed long enough on the mountain that we're on. We've stayed there long enough. And the reason why is that, honestly, even if it's not a good place, I mean, Horeb was not a place where they were supposed to be. It was the in-between place. But if you were there long enough, you start to set down roots. You start to sit down, I kind of like it. I have a system that works. And when you're supposed to move, you don't, because I kind of like it here, even though it's not optimal. I've lost count. I think we're in the teens as to how many times Jody and I have moved. Seriously, I think we're in the teens. And here's what's funny. Jody hates to move. I think it's fun. And we have moved a lot. And sometimes I will tell you, it is this place where you go, man, I just kind of wish everything was normal. This is the longest, the house we're in now is the longest we have ever been at any house. Longest we've ever been. So the boys are like, it's getting Nancy, it's getting time. So we don't know. But here's the thing. But sometimes we will stay in a place that's not even good for us because we're afraid of change. We're afraid of what's around. We're afraid of what's over that hill. We're afraid. And so what we know, even though it's not the best for us, can be where we stay. So God says, you have stayed long enough on this mountain. Turn and take your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all their neighbors in the Arabah, in the hill country and in the lowland and in the Negeb and by the sea coast and the land of the Canaanites and in Lebanon as far as the great river and the river Euphrates. He goes, look, you're going to go to this new land and he just literally gave them the dimensions. It's a beautiful land, which is what you guys now know today as where Israel is. Verse 8, see, I have set the land before you. Go in and take possession of the land of the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them and to their offspring after them. He goes, look, we're going to go right up to the edge. Remember, have you ever gone to the edge of the diving board? Right? Everyone can tell you that the water's refreshing. Everyone can tell you you're not going to get hurt. Everyone tell you it's going to be a fun jump, right? But what do? Seize up at the edge, right? And so Moses takes these people all the way up to the edge. He goes, here it is. Everything that's been promised you, the reason why God took you out of Egypt, the reason why God took you through, the reason why God gave you the 10 Commandments, the reason why God did this. And he goes, let's go. It's time to take the land. At that time, I said to you, I am not able to bear you by myself. So what's happening is this. You have to understand connection. When they came out of Egypt, there was no hierarchical system. Meaning there was no government. Literally, they're just a mass of people. Moses was definitely their leader. So what's happening is as they're traveling, people, I don't know if you get a lot of people together, but people start to do things to each other that become a problem. So it literally became, well, this guy kicked my goat, so they go talk to Moses about it, all right? This guy put his tent peg into my area. Whatever the issues were, he has literally hundreds of thousands of people underneath him. And they started coming to him with all their problems. Someone's got to figure it out. Someone's got to make a call. Someone's got to make a ruling. And so literally, the Bible says, literally almost all day and all night, there's a line of people that have problems with each other, and they're bringing the problems to Moses to deal with. At that time, I said, I am not able to bear you by myself. The Lord your God has multiplied you, and behold, you are today as numerous as the stars of heaven. How can I bear by myself the weight and burden of you and your strife? Choose for your tribes wise, understanding, and experienced men, and I will appoint them as your heads. And as you answer me, the thing that you have spoken is good for us to do. So he said, look, it's good. Yeah, let's start doing this. So I took the heads of your tribes, wise and experienced men, and set them as heads over you, commanders of thousands, commanders of hundreds, commanders of 50s, and commanders of 10, and officers throughout your tribes. Now, here's what's happening. Here's a group that literally is a ragtag group. They come out of Egypt, and he goes, it just became wise to kind of get you organized. So we had people from your tribes, experienced men, and we put them over thousands and hundreds and 10s, 50s, all the way down. Now, here's what I love about telling a story. When you tell a story, you can leave out some important parts. So what's interesting is, notice that when Moses tells the story in Deuteronomy, hey, I found out you were too much for me. Well, that's kind of how it happened. For those of you that know your Bibles, who was the person that told Moses that they were too much for him? Jethro. His father-in-law goes, they're going to kill you. They're too much for you. Because I'm going to tell you what happened. I think Moses actually liked being the final word. I think Moses liked that everybody had to come to him and have him be the final say. And Jethro looked at him and goes, you can't keep this up. And Jethro, look at this. This is Exodus chapter 18, 24 and 25. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law, and he did all that he said. Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands or of hundreds, of 50s and of 10s. Now again, when Moses tells a story, Jethro is conveniently left out of the story. Here's what I want you to understand. I kind of get it. When I was in youth ministry, there was an illustration that was given to me when I really started that stuck with me. And it's very, very simple. You take a table, and if you start pouring sand on that table, that pile of sand can only get as big as the base is, because eventually the sand starts to run off the edge of the table. Does that make sense? And that doesn't matter how much sand you pour, that's as tall as that's going to be. So if you want a bigger sand pile, you got to put more tables, and then there's more, and this pile gets bigger. So when I started working, I started getting youth staff. And I will tell you, I had some of the best youth staff that you all have. And I'm watching Brett do the same thing in our youth ministry, and how significant. But can I tell you what happened to me? I'd see this kid that I had been working with, and they're all upset, and they're all worried, and I see them coming. I'm like, oh, they're going to need my help. Getting ready for it. And then they walk past me to go be with their youth staff worker, who then loves on them. And a part of me is like, yay, boo. Because I wanted to be the person that changed their life. And you know what I'm saying? It's that personal pride thing. And I think that's what's happening to Moses. He finally gets it. You can't handle all of this. So why am I telling you this? When I started doing this study, I said, what in the world am I going to do about this section where Moses talks about having to have hundreds and tens and fifties? What's going on? Oh, God and his timing. Can I tell you what's happening? This week, I will be interviewing guys who will be coming on staff as our next executive and associate pastor. We've been using a company that is bringing stuff, and so I've literally been reading through bios and portfolios, because here's what we know. Folks, from the day we started InRoads, I have skills and abilities, and I have things I really don't do well at all. And so we as an eldership for almost 3 years have been talking about what does it mean to bring on that next person who would help us to actually be a healthier church, a more well-rounded church. So we're going to bring another table to the situation. And folks, can I tell you, this applies. Because there's a part of me when that person comes, I can tell you is going to be like, but I wanted them to come to me, right? No, we as a church need to bring wise people that are going to come and help us to be as healthy as we absolutely can be. By the way, everybody that you bring on staff changes the very look of the church. This is going to be an executive pastor. This is going to be a person who is literally going to be handling most of what happens in our office and handling most of what happens in our ministries. They're going to play a significant role of what InRoads will look like as we move forward. But folks, it has to be done. And so please understand, we're not hundreds of thousands of people. We're just this little church. But folks, I'm not saying you're too much for me, but probably are in some ways you're too much for me. And we need to bring other people in. Does that make sense? And we believe it's wise. And we believe it's something we've prayed about, and it's something we're ready for. And as we bring this next person, I can't wait to see what that person's gifts and abilities do to what we're going to do as a church. Do you guys see what we're talking about? Let's move on. And I charge your judges at that time, hear the cases between your brothers and judge righteously between a man and his brother or the alien who is with him. You shall not be partial in judgment. You shall hear the small and great alike. You shall not be intimidated by anyone, for the judgment is God's. And the case that is too hard for you, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. And I commanded you that at that time, all these things that you should do. Then we set out from Horeb, and we went through all that great and terrifying wilderness. Now, watch this. He calls the wilderness great and terrifying. That will become important in a little bit. That you saw on the way to the hill country of the Amorites, as the Lord our God commanded us, and we have came to Kadesh Barnea. Verse 21. See, the Lord your God has set the land before you. Go up, take possession, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has told you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So they get there. They get to the edge of the pool. They get to the edge of the diving board, and Moses goes, go and take it. God has been with you. God has been literally walking with you. Look at this. I love this. He says, then all of you came near me and said, let us send men before us that they may explore the land for us and bring us word again of the way by which we must go up and the cities into which we shall come. The thing seemed good to me, and I took 12 men from you, 1 man from each tribe. Now I want you to know, I have in my notes here, it says he never thunk it. And the reason why I have it written down that way is I think Moses, when these people said, hey, let's send 12 guys in, he never thought that that would be the downfall of his people. But look what happens. And they took into their hand some of the fruit, this is verse 25, and they took into their hand some of the fruit of the land and brought it down to us and brought us word again and said, it is a good land that is the Lord our God is giving us. Yet you would not go up. You would not go up, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. Verse 27, and you murmured in your tents. You murmured in your tents. And what happened was they got in, they heard these 12 men, and as soon as these 12 men said this, by the way, the men said the land is amazing. But they also said, and it has fortified cities, and the people in that land are great and mighty. And so what happened is whispers started happening in the tents. And I will tell you where the whispers came from. It came from fear. It came from fear. What we don't know, we can make so grandiose in our brains. At this point, I'm not even talking about the church. You guys know that. Someone gives you a job opportunity, someone says we're going to move to some place, and you can make that just so huge. And what happens is in the murmuring in the tents, typically what we don't have happen is that people aren't saying the positive thing. There's a commercial that's out right now where these kids are supposedly supposed to be slamming each other. We're like, your mama kind of a thing. But they flip the whole thing like, your mama buys you the best clothes because she, they kind of, and they're like, oh yeah, your mama, it's all positive stuff. And I love that because I'm like, that never happens, right? But here's what's interesting about this. Look what they said. And you murmured in your tents and said, because the Lord hated us. Because the Lord hated us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to give us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us. It was not God brought us this far, took us to the Red Sea, has literally fed us, has been a cloud by day and fire by night. It's not been that God knows what he's doing and has promised us and has always kept his promise. It is God hated us and took us out of the land of Egypt. Let me explain something to you. This is what they're saying. You remember when we were in Egypt and we were making bricks without straw all day long? Remember those good old days? Remember how awesome that was? Where they would beat us and they would literally put us under. Remember that was awesome. That was great. And God hated us and took us from that great place and took us out here so he could destroy us. Folks, it is amazing to me how negativity, because of fear, will start to speak into situations, and the murmurs in the tents is what caused the rebellion. Verse 20. Where are we going up? Our brothers have made our hearts melt, saying that the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and fortified up to heaven. And besides, we have seen the sons of Anakim there. I'm not even going to deal with that last line. Verse 29. Then I said to you, do not dread or be afraid of them. Look at verse 30. The Lord your God who goes before you will himself fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And in the wilderness where you have seen how the Lord your God carried you as a man carries his son. Is that not a beautiful imagery? God has carried you as a man carries his son. When Zach is scared, he wants me to hold him and carry him. Why? Because he believes in my arms, he'll be safe as we go through the process. And then in the wilderness where you have seen how the Lord God carried you as a man carries his son all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in spite of this word, you did not believe in the Lord your God. Listen to me what I want to say to you. Folks, we are at the edge of what is going to be next for us. Let me say this as bluntly as I can. The only thing that is going to hurt the next part of what we're going to do is murmuring in the tents. Murmuring in the tents. I will stand before you today honestly, we truly do not know what the next thing is. Options have come up. We're looking at options. We've had churches offer us to say, hey, come and meet in our facility on Sunday mornings. Those are options. But the elders have made no decisions. We are looking and praying, but this is what I do know. We are saying, God, lead our steps. And if you have a problem, or if you are, or this is afraid, or you, please come talk to us. Do not murmur in the tents. Please. I have no problem with people saying, hey, this may not be my favorite. That's one thing I learned from Kay Liston. Kay says you can never say you don't like anything. You get to say it's not my favorite, right? So there are things that we may choose or God leads us to that you could say is not your favorite. Awesome. But we honestly want God to lead us because maybe there's something that he wants to do with us. So yes, we could be a mobile church. Yes, we could be a church that meets in a parking lot or in a park, or we could get a permanent building out of nowhere. I have no idea. This is what I know. I know that the men of this church, the elders of this church, are prayerfully praying to say, God, tell us what the next step is. If you have concerns, if you have fears, if you have worries, come talk to us. And I may not be able to say to you what you want to hear, but I will say to you honestly, this is where God is leading us. And then you get to choose whether or not you want to follow where God is leading. Because folks, I believe that God has been faithful to us. I remember, I was in here praying for the 24 hours, and remember when there were pews here, and I remember the first 5 families that sat on these pews and said, what would happen if we started a church here? And he's been faithful. And he's been faithful. And so, folks, I just want to let you know that it is going to be fear, and it's going to be murmuring in the tents that could be the most devastating to what's about to happen. Yet in spite of this word, you did not believe in the Lord your God, who went before you in the way to seek you out a place to pitch your tents, in fire by night and in cloud by day, to show you by what way you should go. And by the way, that is all the eldership of this church is asking. God, please show us by way we should go. We don't have to like the way he shows us, but let us not go where he leads. And the Lord heard your words and was angered, and he swore. So here's what happens. They're like, oh, let's go back to Egypt. Can I just tell you, I had someone this week go, is this deal done? Like done. Like, could we just stay here? Like, I mean, we could redo some stuff. We can make it prettier. Is this deal done? I joke with Kathy all the time. Kathy's like, because Kathy knows what's coming. Her workload's about to go up a little bit. So Kathy's always like, are we sure? I'm like, yeah, we're sure. But I love that she asks me. She tells me her fear. Now, here's the thing, folks. At this moment, on the edge of this is not the time to say, let's go back to Egypt. Do you understand? This is not the time to say, let's go back to Egypt. God has been so faithful. And in this, when we come to this place where God has made so many promises to us, so many gifts to us, let us not be those who say there's giants in the land. Because what we're saying is our God is not mighty enough. There's fortified cities. We're saying God is not mighty enough. God can give us anything he wants to give us if we'll be faithful to follow him. Not one of these men of this evil generation will see the good land that I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and to his children I will give the land on which his feet, which he has trodden, because he has wholly followed the Lord. Even with me the Lord was angry on your account and said, you also shall not go in there. What I love about that is, again, Moses, in telling the story, leaves out the part that it really was his fault that he smacked the rock instead of speaking to the rock. But again, when you tell the story, you get to kind of put your own twist on it. Okay, verse 38, Joshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall enter. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. And so what's happening is that Moses goes, all of you, you're going to die. Caleb gets to see it. Joshua gets to lead them in. I don't even get to go in, but trust me, God is angry with you. And by the way, what's about to happen is awesome. Verse 39, and as for your little ones, who you said would become prey, because when they were murmuring in their tents, it's always good to use children, right? Oh, if we take them out there, our children are going to get killed. No, those who you said would become prey, and your children who today have no knowledge of good or evil, they shall go in there, and to them I will give it, and they shall possess it. So God just goes, are you kidding me? I took you through the Red Sea. I who gave you the 10 Commandments. I who have fed you every day. I who have been with you. I who have blessed you. I who have done this thing. We get to the edge of it, and because there's giants in the land, you want to turn around, you're done. Guess what? Your kids who you're worried about, they're going to see the promised land. And here's the scariest verse in this passage. But as for you, turn and journey into the wilderness. By the way, what did he call the wilderness? Scary and terrifying. You now get to spend the next 40 years in the scary and terrifying wilderness because you didn't trust me. Because when the opportunity came to go into the promised land, you listened to the murmurs in the tents and go in the direction of the Red Sea. Now, what's about to happen is actually pretty interesting because we've all done it. By the way, this is going to hit home on every single place. So what happens is they go, no, we don't want to go in the promised land because there's giants in the land. Moses goes, great, because of your doubt, you get to go back for 40 years in the terrifying wilderness. And you know what they do? Oh, okay, we were just kidding. Have you ever done that with your kids where you say, look, I need you to do this, and then when they find out they're in trouble, then they do it, you're like, no. See, you had your chance. You ever had that happen? You could have done it the first time I've asked you. Right? You had your chance. This happened with Zach yesterday. Zach didn't want to go in the car. So before we left, said, Zach, if you come and do a good job, you get a prize. He threw a full-blown fit. I think it was the day before. Full-blown fit. Full-blown fit. Finally got him in the car, and then he gets in the car. He goes, Dad, I stopped crying. I'm ready for my prize. I'm like, oh, no. You had that option back in the house. You have lost that option. Now you're just going on the ride. We don't get a prize. I know, you can see me evil. I don't care. He'll learn. But here's what I want you to get. Isn't it interesting that once we find out what the punishment is, we're like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I love this part because they go for it. I mean, they're us. Then you answer me, we have sinned against the Lord. We ourselves will go up and fight, just as the Lord our God commanded us. And every one of you fastened on his weapons of war and thought it easy to go up in the hill country. And the Lord said to me, say to them, do not go up and fight, for I am not in your midst, lest you be defeated by your enemies. Because he goes, no, it's too late. They're like, we don't want to go in the wilderness again. Let's put our weapons on. God goes, you had your chance. You blew that. They're like, no, we'll go do it. And then Moses goes, God has said this isn't going to go well for you. So I spoke to you and you would not listen, but you rebelled against the command of the Lord and presumptuously went into the land of the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived in that hill country came out against you and chased you as bees. Chased you as bees do, and beat you down in Seir as far as Hormah. And you returned and wept before the Lord, but the Lord did not listen to your voice or give ear to you. Here's what I want you to understand by this passage. God has windows of things he wants to do with us, and if we are trusting in him, I want you to know the blessing comes. But I will tell you, sometimes those windows close. Those windows close. But you're like, no, I'll do it anyway. Can I tell you, okay, little insight. Jody will be the first one that will agree with this. When we went to Colorado, God gave us a vision that was very direct. And when the whole thing in our world kind of changed, you know what I did? Oh no, I'll just do it anyway, right? And I don't believe that I'm shocked that Colorado didn't work. Because when God said this is the way you're supposed to do it, and then when the whole thing fell, we should have stopped and waited for God to put it back into place. Does that make sense? And then what did I do? I'll put my weapon on and I'll just fight my way through. And God goes, you didn't listen to me. You did it in your own strength, Jeff. Folks, there are times when we just need to trust in God, and he is faithful. He's so faithful. And I'm coming to you. I don't know what we're going to look like in a few months. I don't know what we're going to be. I don't know what the service is going to look like. But this is what I do know. My God is faithful. And although it's harder, or it might be more difficult, or it might not be my favorite, he will use it to glorify himself. That's what it is. And I'll be honest with you, and I know that some of you get uncomfortable when I say these things. I don't care. If your desire is to stay here and murmur in your tents, go to some other church. Go to some other church that's not going anywhere. Because honestly, what we need is people that are saying, God, we will follow you. We need to follow you. And if you're going to murmur in your tent, take it someplace else. What we're about to do is not going to be easy. It's not going to be convenient. It actually might be sacrificial. And I think it's where God is leading us. For some of you that just come, like I said, this seems like it's happening really quick. We've been praying about this for 3 years, if not longer. And we are just saying, God, we're on this edge. Literally, we're like the wall's coming. It's going to push us off the edge, right? But we want to walk confidently in what we want to have happen. Verse 46, last verse. So you remained at Kadesh many days, the days that you remained there. What it means there is that you know what they tried to do? They tried not to go back into the wilderness. God goes, no, go back into the place that was scary and crazy, because that's what you chose. You chose, because obviously Egypt has got to be better than whatever God has for you. And they tried to stay where they're at as long as they could, and ultimately, God took them. You know what's sad? I always think about this. Joshua and Caleb, who, by the way, were ready to go in, right? Ready? Crud, for 40 years I got to walk around till these people die. Can you imagine Caleb? I'd be bitter the whole time. You guys cannot die fast enough. Literally, he could have been in the promised land, living it. He's got to walk around while these people die around him. And if it was the other 12 guys, I'd be like, yeah. When that guy died, I'd be like, woo! Again, that's why God doesn't ask me to be a spy in another land. So there we go. Folks, here's what I want to talk about. This whole message, I know it feels like we've been talking about InRoads. Let me say this to you. This is really about you. God has things in your life. God might have taken you to places, but your fear got in the way, and you honestly murmured in your tents and missed the opportunity of God to bless you. God maybe wants you to be used in your school, in your workplace, on your street, within your own family. And sometimes what's happening is God goes, I want to take you someplace and it's going to be great. But guess what? Because it's unknown, you're going to be afraid. Do you trust me? There are stories of some of you that are in this church because you trusted God, had no idea what was going to happen, but you knew God was there, and you're here and God is blessing your ministry. And some of you should be other places, but because of fear, you stayed put. You need this sermon more personally than we need this sermon as a church. Where is God? Is he God enough that you trust him with your business, trust him with your family? Do you trust him with those moments? Because I'm telling you, he is faithful. I don't know how to say it any better than that. He is faithful. And he will do amazing things if you will allow him. But folks, what will stop your growth, what will stop this church, is when we murmur in tents. So again, I want to say to you, if you have concerns, worries, all those things, come talk to us elders. If you hear things about this church, if you hear things that are being said about this church and it doesn't add up for you, come talk to the elders. Again, I'm not telling you you can't be concerned or worried or say, hey, you know what my favorite thing would be? You know what my favorite thing would be? We'd be done with all this and we'd be on to other things. That would be my favorite thing. But if it's not your favorite, say, God, how do I grow through it? What do you want to do with me? How do you want to challenge me? All right. I think I've said enough to you. But let me just say this. It's going to be fun. And those of you that know me know that I have a different definition of fun. Let me pray. Heavenly Father,